This is an article that came out on Bloomberg, September 20th, 2017. Opioids on the job are overwhelming American employers. All right. And a lot of it is a lot of people are abusing drugs right there on their jobs. Um, and according to data, most drug addicts don't show up for work all the time. They'll take days off. They won't call in and notify their employees. So it's become a very overwhelming problem in the US, and it's going to continue to get worse. Remember, many of these people can't even pass a pre employment drug test. These are employees that already been on the job and became opioid addicts. I'm going to go ahead and play this video.
It's impossible to ignore America's opioid epidemic anymore. The numbers are staggering. Nearly 500,000 Americans say they used heroin in the past 30 days. Heroin overdoses more than tripled between 2010 and 2014, and deaths from all opioids, including heroin, are now approaching the number of deaths from car crashes. So how did we get here? Pain. So here's the situation. There's a grim connection between opioid painkiller addiction and heroin addiction in this country. In the 90s, doctors turned to drugs like OxyContin, Vicodin, and Percocet to remedy what was seen as widespread undertreatment of chronic pain. The number of opioid prescriptions filled in 1992, 79 million. By 2012, that number rose a lot to 217 million. As those numbers skyrocketed, the federal government forced drug makers to make prescription painkillers harder to abuse. At the same time, heroin from Afghanistan and Mexico became a cheaper and more readily available alternative. The result is 4 or 5 new heroin users in the US have said they previously misused prescription pain relievers. Now here's the argument. President Donald Trump appointed a commission that in August advised him to declare opioid addiction a national emergency and rapidly expand treatment capacity, among other measures.
It's a national emergency. We're going to spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money on the opioid crisis.
But Trump said he's focused on cutting off the supply of drugs rather than expanding treatment, as his commission had recommended. The healthcare bill passed by House Republicans that Trump supported also would have dropped the requirement that drug treatment be covered by Medicaid. Nearly every state has enacted laws related to opioid abuse, including targeting doctors and pharmacists who overprescribe pills. States and the federal government have also made the opiate antidote naloxone more readily available. It's credited with reversing more than 26,000 overdoses between 1996 and 2014. Meanwhile, advocates for patients in chronic pain worry that rushing to solve the addiction crisis could leave those who truly need opioids with needless suffering.
Okay, you can see right there how out of control, and Trump has still not signed the declaration, as I told you before. At Philip Talkoff food processing plant in Baltimore, machines grinding tough horseradish roots into puree. If you put your arm in the wrong place, the owner says, you're not paying attention, is going to pull you in. It's not a good place to be intoxicated. Drug abuse in the workplace is a growing challenge for American business. While economists have paid more attention to the opioid plague's role in keeping people out of work, about 2/3 of those who report misusing pain relievers are on the payroll. In the factory or office, such employees can be a drag on productivity, one of the U.S. economy's sore spot. In the worst case, they can endanger themselves and their colleagues. That's why Talkoff practices zero tolerance. One randomly chosen employee get tested every month, and we're going to move it to 2. The costs mound up. he has to hire a third-party company to select the worker and pay the clinic to conduct tests. Money is wasted training workers who are subsequently drop out when they fail the screening, and they are losing so much money. And you know what it's going to come down to, y'all? They're going to start making people, if you want the job, you're going to have to pay for the drug test yourself. That way, if you fail it, the company doesn't lose anything. That's what it's really going to come down to, because there are so many. It's not like a few drug tests. They are failing these tests by the hundreds of thousands across the country. It's really crazy. Then there are the added care costs. Castlight Health, a benefit platform, estimate that opioid abusers cost employers nearly twice as much in healthcare expenses as their clean coworkers, an extra $8,600 a year. Yeah, they're getting tired of shelling out that money. That's why they're turning to immigrants and finding other ways to get people in, because they can no longer rely on many of these people in America to do these jobs. And then when they go outside for these people, then these same folks screaming for jobs are mad, but they're the main ones that are on drugs. You can't have it both ways. It's no wonder that every boss is rigorous as a tall cough. I know people who've said, I can't do it. I would lose too many people, he says. That means if they do random drug tests on their people, they already know they're going to lose a lot of people that are already working there. They already know this. At the moment, 57% of employers say they perform drug tests according to the National Safety Council. Out of those, more than 40% don't screen for synthetic opioids like hydrocodone, among the most widely abused narcotics, and one of the substance that new federal rules are targeting. All right, I'm going to go ahead and play this video.
It's impossible to ignore America's opioid epidemic anymore. The numbers are staggering.
Okay,
Nearly
it's the
half a
same
million
video.
Americans.
It's just in a different spot, so I'm going to skip that. I thought maybe it was a different video, but it's the same. Starting next month, many federal government employees who take drug tests will have to submit to a more extensive screening. One response to a spiraling crisis. Opioids killed about 33,000 Americans in 2015, more than any other year on record. Private companies aren't obliged to follow Washington's lead, but in such areas they often do. And as you can see, from 1999 all the way to 2015, this thing is just, it continues to rise. And it just shows you the black is heroin, and the pink is other opioids, the blue methadone, and synthetic narcotics, which is probably your fentanyl right here in the green. Factories with their heavy machinery and are where drug abusing workers can do the most immediate harm to themselves and their colleagues. Even their employers are tempted to look the other way, according to Mike Galeazzo, president of the Regional Manufacturing Institute of Maryland. I have heard manufacturers over the years say, we wish we didn't have to test for drugs because they lose money when they can't fill those positions, he said. That's why they want to do it away with drug testing, because you know what? a lot of these, no defense, a lot of these caucasoids can't get employed now because of, they are your main drug abusers in in this country. So now they are talking about phasing out drug testing, which in my opinion will still be disastrous, because now you can count on them coming high on the job because they know you're not going to test them. So it's kind of a catch-22. Hiring is becoming tougher in any case. While the economy has steadily added jobs since the financial crisis ended, the available pool of workers hasn't expanded to match. Their share of working age Americans in the labor market is stuck at about 63%, down more than 4% points since 2000, the same period in which the opioid epidemic took off. There's an extreme shortage of skilled workers, Galeazzo said. Even in a city like Baltimore, where the unemployment rate is almost 2% points higher than the national average, drugs are probably at least partly to blame for that, too. There's a growing consensus among economists that opioid abuse has contributed to the shrinking workforce. Fed Chair Janet Yellen has flagged the issue. Princeton's Alan Kruger estimates that drugs may account for 1/5 of the drop among men. For businesses, the labor squeeze plus opioid plague are making it especially hard to expand quickly when they get new orders, says Drew Greenblatt, owner and president of Marlin Steel Wire Products LLC in Baltimore, which make industrial strength metal baskets used in factories. We just nailed a huge job and we need to hire 3 people, he said. We're banging our heads against the wall. So they're having a problem filling just 3 positions because so many people keep failing drug tests. That's outrageous. And there's no guarantee that new hires will stick around. Drug problems are accelerating the turnover among staff. In the last 3 weeks, we've had 6 people come, get trained, and then are no call, no shows. Wow. Greenblatt said. He said the biggest loss comes from taking high-performing employees out of the production process so they can train new employees. That person is diverted into the completely unproductive task of teaching someone who's going to leave in a day or 2. Productivity growth in the U.S. economy has been slowing for decades. There's little consensus about the causes, but there are signs that the spreading of drug abuse could be contributing to the problem. Gee, you think? Really? The National Safety Council survey found that 29% of employees reported impaired job performance due to prescription painkiller use, while 15% cited an injury or near miss that they attribute to drugs. As many as 70% said their workforce had been affected in some way. In some cases, the growing drug problem put employers in the position of having to fire employees who'd been on the job perfectly well, been doing their jobs perfectly well. We caught someone recently, saw him injecting, says Jay Steinmetz, chief executive of Barcoding Inc. The Baltimore company creates software and provide equipment that helps businesses manage their inventory. The incident took place at a recent acquired subsidiary called Power Up, Steinmetz said. Once we witness We were forced to take action or break the law, he said. Could he have worked with opioids in his body? Absolutely. He concludes that the problem for employers isn't just the opioid plague, but the legal regime that emerged to combat it. A huge interruption of business, Steinmetz is well aware of the human cost too. One of the smartest technicians, a servant genius kid, died almost a decade ago from recreational OxyContin. As awareness grows, prescriptions such as painkillers have been leveling off and deaths from prescription drugs have stabilized. In some cases, users are switching to heroin or illegal synthetics like fentanyl. Not only are those drugs more dangerous, they can also be difficult to catch. Heroin metabolizes very quickly. Fentanyl isn't usually one of the substances screened for. And this ain't going to change because, as you heard, Trump do not want to treat addicts. He wants to fight it on the street level and cutting the drugs off, which we know is not going to happen. Drug dealers have been figuring out crafty ways in getting drugs in this country for decades, and they will continue to do so. I don't care what they do on the street level. If the street level worked, they would have cut drugs off decades ago. And you can clearly see it has never happened in this country. That's just a picture of downtown Baltimore. So calling it a national emergency, but not helping the actual drug addicts, how does that make any difference in the country? It's not. It's not. That's why I keep saying in all of my videos, this drug plague ain't going nowhere, ladies and gentlemen. And remember, Trump still won't sign the declaration, which means nothing is being dealt with right now as far as the plague is concerned. The detection window in a urine drug test is relatively short, said Barry Sample, the director of science and technology at Quest Diagnostics, a healthcare and drug testing company. If an addict can substitute something else for heroin or get temporarily clean, you're probably not going to find anything a week later. Talkoff describes what's happened in the last one of his workers was subjected to random drug tests, which led to the firing of 4 employees in the past 5 years, out of a staff of about 80 at the Baltimore plant. The employee went to the clinic and provided a sample that wasn't at the right temperature, an indication that it was probably someone else's urine. He then sat at the clinic until it closed without giving another one. He returned after the weekend for a second test. That one came back clean, Talkoff said. It's very suspicious, but unfortunately, we don't have any hard evidence. That happened a couple of weeks ago. Since then, he decided to double the rate of testing. Person tried to take somebody else's urine. Okay. You see how, like I said, it's having a domino effect, and it's really dragging down the economy. If you can't get workers in these businesses, then these people are nothing but a drag on the economy. It doesn't matter how much money you throw at them. If they don't want to get off the drug, they're not going to. Please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. And if you can make a donation to my channel, please do. Peace, family.